Speaking right now, criminal defense attorney and former Watergate prosecutor John Sale, also state attorney for Palm Beach County, Florida, Dave Ehrenberg. He's back with us as well. And Dave, first I want to go to the Manhattan DA case because, again, I keep hearing all these people yammering about, oh, this would never happen if it weren't Donald Trump, if it weren't Donald Trump. I've given three examples. They're the simplest examples, but there are tons of examples of New Yorkers being charged for doing far less than Donald Trump here.
Joe, just look at Michael Cohen. He went to federal prison for the hush money payments. And the main reason why Donald Trump wasn't indicted with him was because he was a president at the time, and there's an internal DOJ policy against indicting a sitting president. So question is, do we have equal justice under the law here in our country? And it is ironic that the biggest critics right now of what Alvin Bragg is about to do were the ones who were chanting, lock her up. And now that it's their guy who's being prosecuted, it's the DA and not the candidate that's corrupt. Remember, Joe, Alvin Bragg decided not to prosecute Trump a year ago for financial crimes because he thought there was not enough evidence for it, and he incurred a ton of criticism. Remember, Mark Pomerantz wrote that book about him, a scathing book about Alvin Bragg. But we prosecutors don't do politics. We're not intimidated by political pressure. We just follow the evidence and the law. And I think it's interesting that these so-called law and order folks are suddenly obsessed with the rights of suspects and defendants. Let's see if that persists after this case and applies to people who are not inside the MAGA bubble.
So, John Sale, you have said that this past fall you were offered a chance to work to represent former President Trump. You declined that opportunity. So tell us now, if you will, give us your assessment of this case, and in particular, where you think things stand, and what last-minute wrinkles, perhaps from the Costello testimony, may occur.
Well, I'm going to walk into the lion's den and disagree to some extent with my good friend Dave and with you, Joe, also. First of all, having gone through Watergate, I think I have some credibility that I believe to my core that no one's above the law. But by the way, nobody is saying, though, that no matter how much one dislikes Donald Trump, that not in the court of a public opinion, but in the legal arena, he's entitled to a presumption of innocence. But going on from there, whereas no one's above the law, some of the cases that Joe recited, I haven't had a chance to really look at those because they're newly reported, but I don't think those were elevated to a felony in what the New York Times is calling an untested legal theory. So what I believe, I am not. You mentioned that I turned down respectfully representing former President Trump. So I'm not an apologist for President Trump at all. But I think the whole world is watching. The whole world is watching our criminal justice system, and it is the first time, if he's going to be indicted, that we've indicted a former president. So I think we should take our best shot. So, you know, the New York Times today has an excellent article about what's called prosecutorial discretion. So a grand jury can legally indict on probable cause, but they don't do that. You indict if you believe in good faith that the evidence would sustain a conviction beyond a reasonable doubt. And Alvin Bragg, and I give him the benefit of the doubt, he went on Reverend Sharpton's show, and he said he's only looking at the facts and the law. The facts rely heavily on Michael Cohen. And not only has he gone on every television show in the world, which if I ever had a prosecutor when I was in the Southern District of New York, and he did that, I'd have pulled his cooperation agreement in a heartbeat. This theory about it being a political contribution, which elevates it to a felony, the Federal Election Commission looked at it and they rejected it. And we can't blame Bill Barr's Justice Department for not prosecuting it, because Merrick Garland has had 2 years as Attorney General, where if they believed that this case was worthy of prosecution, they would have gone with it. There are two other cases that go to the heart of our democracy. And one of them, of course, is the insurrection. And if the evidence, again, he's presumed innocent, but if the evidence shows that he's guilty of that, Jack Smith, go for it. Jack Smith is not at all timid. I mean, he's subpoenaed Mike Pence. He's subpoenaed Ivanka. He's subpoenaed Jared. He's going to be thorough rather than quick. And the Mar-a-Lago case, I mean, if Evan Corcoran is required to testify, I mean, that's a open and shut obstruction case. Those cases are very, very significant. And let me say one other thing. There are standards that govern prosecution, and every jurisdiction has them. And the ABA standards say that even if the evidence supports a conviction, a prosecutor is not required to bring such a case. And there are two things that they say they can consider. And one of them is the motives of the principal witness against him. Michael Cohen, it's reported that he went to jail for Donald Trump for doing this. He also pled guilty to serious tax evasion, serious bank fraud that had nothing to do with Donald Trump whatsoever. And the law is untested. The New York Times today wrote an article saying that the theory Alvin Bragg is using is untested. So I just think it's the wrong case to start with. That's my point of view.
Well, speaking of going on television, we want to play for you something Trump lawyer Joe Tacopina said last week about the Stormy Daniels case.
Even if you put in your checkbook, or I'll use me as an example. I put in my checkbook, I bought a car and I wrote, I purchased a horse. That's inaccurate. That's a lie, maybe. But there's no crime there because this filing was not for the purpose of influencing an election. There wasn't something being hidden. There was no obligation to disclose this to an election campaign committee at all.
I see. Let's compare that to what he said almost exactly 5 years ago.
If there's an issue with that payment to Stormy Daniels being that it was made on behalf of the candidate, okay, and it was not declared, that's fair game, unfortunately, if that's the case. And, quite frankly, Michael Cohen, again, has made statements that would give rise to suspicion for any prosecutor to say, that doesn't make sense, that a lawyer took out a home equity loan with his own money, paid somebody that he didn't even know on behalf of a client who, by the way, had the wherewithal and the money to afford $130,000. And by the way, didn't tell the client about the settlement agreement. It's an illegal agreement. It's a fraud, if that's in fact the case.
And that's his lawyer. How shocking. Like Lindsey Graham, like everybody else, it seems, in Donald Trump's life, they say something when they're on cameras supporting Trump, but you go back, there's always tape of them actually undermining their own credibility.
Dave Ehrenberg, as John Sales says, he feels it's the wrong one to start with, but I don't think DAs and investigators, the DOJ, Georgia officials are lining their cases up. I think everybody is following the law. You can only hope that they are following the law, and a crime ultimately is a crime, no matter which one you start with.
Yes, and I love my friend John Sale. I just want to rebut something he said, or at least try to. There were good reasons why the Department of Justice did not charge Donald Trump at the time. Number one, at the time he was president, and there was that internal policy against indicting a sitting president. Secondly, Jeffrey Berman, the former U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, said in his book that Bill Barr then ordered them to stop the investigation relating to Trump. And then third, after Biden took over, the DOJ had bigger fish to fry. They were starting their massive investigation over January 6th. So this was seen as too small. And so there are reasons why Trump was in charge at the time. But state prosecutors can go when they have the facts and when the law is on their side.
All right, Dave Ehrenberg, thank you so much. John Sell, we always appreciate you being here and hope you'll come back very soon. Would love to keep talking. We actually, though, have Senator Cantwell with us, and she has to get to a hearing, so we're going to move on there. But thank you so much, John.
Thank you both very much.
Thank you, Dave. And guys, please come back this week.